All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rose Simpson. I'm a librarian at the New Haven Free Public Library, and welcome to Camp Public Kitchen, Cooking Around the Clock. Today, our creative in residence, Nadine Nelson, is going to be teaching us how to make dinner. Take it away.
Hi, I am Nadine Nelson. I am the chef, owner, and educator of Global Local Gourmet. I am also an artist. This week, I am in the role of chef educator, and I'm excited to teach you how to cook all throughout 24 hours, how to be able to nourish yourself, and also to be doing some of like exercises. Yesterday, we learned how to sew on a button in 3 different ways. We talked about mending and forgiveness of self and learning from failure, to fail forward and to look at it as growth. Today we are making dinner and we are making tomato sauce. And so we are in Connecticut and we have had some different themes. And so one of the themes this week is that Connecticut has the third largest Italian American population in the country. So I grew up here. I moved here when I was 10. So I grew up around Italian food, but also I was born in Toronto, and that there's a large Italian population there too. So, but I have been making tomato sauce, homemade tomato sauce from scratch from high school, and it's very easy to do, and it's very inexpensive. Like a can of tomatoes is $1 to $2. Um, and so we're going to be making 2 different types of tomato sauce. We're going to be making a meat sauce, and then we're making just plain sauce. And then we're going to also be making macaroni and cheese. That's probably kids, I would think, one of their most favorite or most popular dishes. And so the same amount of time that it takes to be able to boil water for the packaged macaroni and cheese, the same amount of time that it takes to make macaroni and cheese from scratch. So we are going to make macaroni and cheese from scratch. And then we're going to also make Caesar salad dressing. A couple of days ago during brunch, we learned how to make salad dressing. And so we're going to make Caesar salad dressing today and also make chocolate mousse. Normally, I felt a little bit about this menu that there is a lot of cream or milk. You can choose to use non-dairy products. This is a class this week about teaching people the basics and things that are easy to do in formula. So like the macaroni and cheese, you can use different cheeses, different milks, but you can bake it, you can have it over the stove. But it's one of those recipes that you can change up. You can put vegetables in it or shrimp or chicken or like make a hamburger helper style dish. And so I'm trying to do dishes that are easy for kids to be able to adapt and improvise. The same thing with the tomato sauce. You can make a tomato sauce just plain, or you can make it with meat, or you can make it with vegetables. Um, you can put cream in there. So I'm doing dishes that are popular. The same thing with the chocolate mousse. You can use different types of chocolate, or you can use fruit. But the whole idea of whipping cream and making a dessert that's really easy and fast, I want to be able to teach kids to be able to do. And so that is a kind of philosophy for today. For the home activities, we're going to do a quick pickle. And so we're trying to show how to not waste food, but then my daughter loves pickles, and they're easy to do. We're not going to do a canning pickle where you have to boil water and then cover it. It just is a quick pickle with excess vegetables that you might have in your house. And then you can put it in a mason jar or something that closes, and it will keep for around 3 weeks. We will also talk about ways in which we can preserve our family recipes and our family legacy through food. And so the first video I am going to show today are comfort foods from around the world. And the way that the stories are told, they're like 20 comfort foods from around the world, but then they're told in a storytelling way and ways in which we can use food to preserve our family memories. So we could do that through film. We could do that through audio. podcasting or just using a recorder on our phone makes it easy, but also through writing our recipes down. But I think it's really important the stories behind the recipes and the pictures behind the recipes, like having pictures that go with recipes, I think is really important. And also just taking pictures while your family members make their most popular dishes, not only to memorialize the people that are making the food, but also the steps and the techniques that it takes to make particular dishes. Because the dishes that I want to record are the dishes that are hardest to necessarily remember and take a lot of technique. And those things would be welcome, I think, to be able to take pictures and steps so you can pass that down from generation to generation. And then also, like for myself, I'm Jamaican. And the way that I cook, I love my traditional recipes, but I also like to be able to improvise and make new things with the ingredients that are from my culture, to innovate and to mix it up and have fun with it. I think that is important too. So we are right now going to watch a video about comfort foods from around the world and think about, get ideas from this video, when how people are sharing their stories, and you're seeing like lots of different types of foods being made. What are ways in which you can record your family recipes, your food memories, and those things that are related to food that you want to treasure, like, your spices, like what are different ways that maybe your seeds, like the different, there's a particular callaloo plant or tomato plant. We're making tomato sauce, like heirloom tomatoes are wonderful. And we're going to learn where tomatoes come from and the different intersections of like how tomato sauce came to be, how pasta came to be, how macaroni and cheese came to be, and the connections that tie us throughout the world. So think about those things as you're watching the video. Thanks, Rose.
All right, one moment.
In these stressful and uncertain times of quarantine, people from all over the world are seeking comfort in food. Comfort food can fix any bad day. It's typically high in sugar, fat, and/or salt. And the beauty of comfort food is that it varies from person to person. It's rooted in where you're from and who you grew up with. We asked 20 people from different cultural backgrounds to share what comfort food is to them. I'll start with mine.
My favorite comfort food is kimchi jjigae or kimchi stew. I'm Korean American, and growing up, my mom made kimchi jjigae pretty often for dinner. My mom's kimchi jjigae has that sonmat. Sonmat in Korean means like hand taste. The best way I can describe it is my mom's special touch. Even if I try to make my mom's kimchi jjigae here in New York City, I can't get that taste because it lacks my mom's special touch. So basically the flavors that you're getting are like spicy, salty, fatty, sour. It's basically everything that I crave when I'm missing my mom.
I'm Nigerian, and one of my favorite comfort foods has to be amala and okra soup. To make it, you take some yam flour and you pour it into boiling hot water, stir it up very quickly, and it gets to this nice thick consistency. From there, you portion it out to whatever size you'd like for your meal, and then you can dip it into your soup of choice. And not only is it a super tasty meal, but after you eat it, it hits you and it puts you in one of those nice food comas. I remember sneaking into the kitchen as a toddler and trying to tear off small pieces of amala or like the ear seeds that they put in the soup and taking it back to my playroom. So of course now, anytime that I have it, I just automatically think of home.
I'm Trinidadian, and my favorite comfort food is bacon saltfish. Bacon saltfish is a dish comprised of bake, which is dough rolled out, and a fish called bacalao. It's a salted cod that we chop up, we boil, and we saute with sweet tomatoes and sweet onions. I think it's my favorite comfort food just because it brings back a memory of my grandmother. She used to own a daycare, and whenever she was making something with dough, like bake, she would roll up little pieces of the dough and give it to the children to play with, and we would just go crazy for those little pieces of dough.
My favorite Haitian comfort food is griot. Griot is fried pork shoulder that has a special cut where it has just the right amount of fat and just the right amount of skin on it. You would season it well, bake it briefly, and then fry it. So after that, it'll get that nice crispy on the outside, tender on the inside taste. I can remember being as a child, every Haitian gathering, family party, if you had griot on your plate that night, you knew it was gonna be a good night.
My comfort food has always been pastina, which is like a really unhealthy version of Italian wedding soup. It has no vegetables, it's really just pasta and meatballs. So the way that my mom makes her meatballs is really what I always crave. She does a mix of ground pork, ground beef, and ground veal. And then she adds in just 5 ingredients. So the 5 ingredients are salt, pepper, garlic powder, parsley, and cheese. It's not just like Parmesan cheese, it's always Pecorino Romano cheese. That's like the go-to key ingredient. Whenever I go home or whenever I'm like sad or sick or whatever, that's what I want my mom to make me, or that's what I like want to eat.
I'm from New York and my favorite comfort food is grilled cheese. Growing up as a picky eater, grilled cheese was the #1 thing I could get from every single family member and every single restaurant, and it'd be almost the exact same every single time. So today when I make grilled cheese for myself, I just use white or wheat bread and I use white American cheese. It reminds me of being best friends with my mom.
I'm Allison Brown, and today we're going to talk about beef patties because that's my favorite Jamaican comfort food. Growing up, my father used to bring home like a box of beef patties, and he used to put them on the table, and it was first come, first serve, and if you did not get your beef patty, you would be tight. I love beef patties because of how diverse they are. You could get a beef patty, a callaloo patty, a ackee patty, any type of patty. My family is Jamaican. They're from Jamaica. I'm American. I was born here. But when we go to Jamaica, it's over. The patties are like hot and ready. They're delicious.
I'm from New York. I'm Dominican. And my favorite comfort food is Mangu. Mangu is basically like mashed potatoes, but instead of potatoes, it's plantains. And it's a breakfast food, so most Dominicans will eat it in the morning. Mangu is typically eaten with cebollas on top, which is onions, queso frito on the side, which is fried cheese, salami, which is a type of meat, and usually like some people will get a fried egg on it. Personally, I love eggs, so I always get it on it. The reason why Mangu is my favorite comfort food, besides the fact that it's delicious, is because it just reminds me of being in the Dominican Republic and just like being around great weather, sunny, like just an all-around great vibe.
My comfort food is pepper pot. It came from Guyana's first people known as the Amerindians. Pepper pot is a meal that is boiled with casserole and spices and any choice of meat. But my personal favorite is beef. It can be eaten with anything: bread, cassava bread, rice, anything you would like. Pepper pot reminds me of Christmas time and all the family time and our rich culture in Guyana.
My favorite comfort food is congee, a type of rice porridge. It's often eaten with yao zha guai, also known as a Chinese donut. There are also many different types of congee. I've had it plain, with dried scallops, with preserved egg and salted pork, and just white fish. Growing up, my mom would make this for breakfast some days, and she would also make it for me when I was sick and I couldn't keep any solid foods down. My mom passed away in January of 2018, so the process of making congee and eating it reminds me of her love, her dedication, and her patience as my mother.
I'm Mexican American, and my favorite comfort food is tamales. Every year my grandma and her sisters get together and they all make tamales for us to eat on Christmas Eve. So it really reminds me of home and of Christmas time and of my family, so it's really special. My family makes the dish with shredded pork in a red chili sauce with green olives. Basically right now only my grandma and my aunts know how to make it, but they've started to teach me and my mom and my sisters how to do it so that way we can pass it on to the next generation.
My favorite comfort food is Marmite on toast. It just has this really rich, really savory and quite salty flavor, and it's just really comforting, especially when it's put on some thickly buttered toast. I have very vivid memories of eating Marmite on toast, particularly when I was feeling a bit sick. I had an operation when I was 3 years old. I went under general anesthetic. When I woke up, the nurse said, "Is there anything we can get you?" And my first request was Marmite on toast.
My favorite comfort food is gatiao, or Thai noodle soup. Thai noodle soup is the Thai equivalent of what a deli sandwich is to New Yorkers. And you can customize each kutteo order to be your own. My go-to order is kutteo pet, so duck noodle soup with senmi, which are the rice noodles that are thinner than the ones you have in pho. And I only will eat it in this one noodle shop, and I refuse to have it elsewhere because they just make it so special. And it sucks because I can't really replicate that experience in any Thai restaurant here since they don't really specialize in that.
My favorite comfort food are Colombian arepas. Arepas are cornmeal patties. They're typically made with salt, water, and masa arepa. This is my favorite comfort food because when I was a kid, my dad and I did not have matching schedules at all. So by the time we would get home, I was already sleeping and we wouldn't see each other till the weekend. And at the weekends, our favorite family time activity was to make arepas. It was also the first meal I learned how to make. So we're gathered in our tiny kitchen, mold them together, put it in a stovetop, and then once they were ready and hot, my dad would put butter on top, sprinkle it with a little bit of cheese, and it was delicious, and it's still one of my favorite meals.
My favorite comfort food is Puerto Rican pasteles de yuca. In Spanish, we call it a masa. It's like a doughy kind of thing that has like, you can put stuff in it. So you can put like meat, chicken, you can put vegetables. And they wrap it around a banana leaf and then they boil it. And we make them in bulk. And it takes 2 to 3 days to make. It's my favorite comfort food because my aunts and my mom, they sit around, we talk, and they're making this dish that is so reminiscent of our Puerto Rican culture.
My comfort food is lahmacun. It's a thin flatbread, almost like pizza, that's enjoyed in and around the Middle East. It's typically made by taking small dough balls and flattening them into really thin pieces, and then it's topped with beef or lamb, some vegetables and spices, and then it's cooked in the oven for just a few minutes. My family and I typically buy a dozen or so of them from Armenian bakeries or grocery stores here in LA because they make them really tasty.
My comfort food is ají de gallina. It's a spicy chicken mixture that my grandma used to make all the time. A yellow pepper that's found in Peru, ají amarillo, is mixed with, you saute some onions, then you're gonna add some chicken broth, milk, and crackers or bread. It's a nice little paste sauce. And then with some boiled chicken that you shredded. Ají de gallina reminds me of just Peru in general, living there. My grandfather had 50, 80 chickens, and my grandma would just grab one and it would be fresh.
I'm British Pakistani, and my favourite comfort food is a dish called aloo ki tarkari. The reason I love this dish so much is because it's a curry. It's very carby as opposed to one with lots of gravy. My mum usually adds to it aloo, potatoes, mirch, chili, namak, salt, haldi, turmeric, and then she adds something called panch brine, which is a blend of 5 spices. You blend the spices, you fry them, you add your chopped up potatoes, add water, boil the water off and let the potatoes break up. It's really heartwarming, very flavoursome, and it also reminds me of coming home from school and cooking with my mum. Learning to cook with my nani, my mum's mum, who passed away a few years back.
My 2 favorite Brazilian comfort foods are cheese bread and feijoada. For cheese bread, there's definitely not an occasion. It's just everywhere all the time. You can eat it at any time of the day. It's without a doubt the food that I miss the most because it's just the perfect snack. Feijoada is basically a giant black bean soup. It's definitely something that I grew up eating, and it's very iconic in Brazil. Almost everyone eats it.
My favorite comfort food has to be full, which is fava beans. And it's usually served hot, and it's really easy to make, so that's why we make it all the time. It contains tomatoes, onions, some people put tahina in it, and we put in it a lot of spices. Usually people eat it with pita bread. It's my favorite comfort food because over the summer my grandpa would make it for breakfast a lot, so I'd wake up and it would be there. So it reminds me a lot of home.
As social beings, social distancing may not be easy. Let's do what we can and make the most of it by enjoying our favorite comfort foods. Let us know what your favorite comfort food is and why in the comment section below.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
What's your favorite comfort food, Rose?
Probably macaroni and cheese, which is very convenient that you're making that today. There's so many
Right.
ways to make it, and as long as it's not super greasy or super watery, you really can't go wrong.
Do you like it? Is there any particular way that you like it? Do you make it from scratch or do you like it from a box?
I can do either way. And there's like, if I do make it from a box, I'm always adding stuff like chopped vegetables or a can of tuna or always like extra actual cheese. And when I make it like from scratch, you can either do it so it's like on the stove, kind of creamy sauce, or you can do it as a baked mac and cheese. And I like either one of those too.
Yeah, it depends on like what mood that I'm in, or like I asked Soleil. Soleil really likes macaroni and cheese, so I ask her if she's in the mood for it to be creamy on top of the stove, or does she want it to be, you know, creamy and then have like the nice hard cheese crust, you know? So I'm doing mise en place, and so mise en place is all your ingredients cut up before you start cooking. So while the video was going on, I was doing that, like whatever mise en place we haven't been doing. I have some red onion, and this is how like the recipe is very loose, especially for the tomato sauce. It's really up to you how you want to do it. You can do fresh tomato sauce, you can do canned, you can do fire roasted. It really is up to you, like what your own personal taste. Like for instance, when I do fresh, I love the skin. I don't mind skin. I don't mind bitter. So for things like tomatoes are in the nightshade family, and we'll see a little video that talks about where tomatoes came from. You know, yesterday talked about tomatoes, potatoes, peppers. They're all the nightshade family. They came from Latin America, but they tend to have a little bit of bitterness. But I don't mind the bitter. Like for eggplant, some people soak it. For tomatoes, some people take off the seeds when they're making their sauce. I leave the seeds and the skin. So it's really, I always tell people, it's really personal preference for you. So I don't know, can you see this right here? I'm going to show people how to cut an onion because that's always helpful for people. So we have the end is still on, and then you want to go down vertically, however big, however small you want your cuts. So it'll be a dice or a mince if it's really small, all right? And then also you want to be able to hold your knife in a claw against your knuckles. Right now, I'm holding and then going horizontal. And then I will hold this together. Hold the knife against your knuckles. And you don't have to work on speed, work on proficiency, work on not cutting your fingers. So you feel like I'm fast. I'm not as fast if I was in a restaurant kitchen where I'd be cutting and doing so much every day. I teach people how to cook, and I cook for my family, and we've been in quarantine. So I'm not cooking for a lot of people. I'm just cooking one meal, like for 6 people or for 4 people, like for the recipe. So it's not a lot of chopping per se. So here is my onion. I think I need another onion, so I'm going to do that right now. And then my daughter is right here behind. I did garlic also. My daughter is right here behind the computer, and we'll talk about some of the home ec questions, like about favorite foods and stuff like that. So what is your favorite comfort food, Soleil? Okay. I'll let her repeat the question, so if you don't hear me.
The question was what my favorite comfort food is, and my favorite comfort food would be quesadillas or tacos because they're really easy to make and you can make them really fast and in many different variations and ways.
So why don't you describe which ways you like them?
Um, I like my quesadillas with a lot of cheese and meat, and avocado. I like to just make simple quesadillas with just cheese and then have a dip on the side like salsa or guacamole. Um, yeah.
You want to tell people where you get some of your inspiration from?
When cooking or in general?
Pardon?
When
Or
cook,
like you make a lot of tacos and stuff. Do you want to discuss like where you get some of your inspiration?
Okay, so I don't know if you can hear her, but the question was where did I get my inspiration for making tacos? My inspiration for making any food is just how I think it's gonna taste based on the foods I've already tasted. Um, so I've had guacamole a lot of times, so I just know what to do and what flavors I want when making it.
Can you describe what the flavors are for people who don't know how to make guacamole?
The question was to describe the flavors of guacamole. I don't know if you guys can hear. Um, the flavors that I like the best with guacamole would be spicy flavors because I like spicy food. So paprika, smoked paprika, chili powder, or just hot sauce. And then I like my guacamole a little bit spicy. Oh wait, I already said that. I like my a little lemony or citrus. So I'll just add lemon juice or straight up lemon. I'll squeeze lemon into it
Or lime?
or lime.
Um, so being Jamaican, what are some of your favorite foods? And so I've been talking about this week that my mom moved to Toronto when she was 23. So she was um, a young woman, a young single woman. But she grew up her father was a farmer and a fisherman, and so was her mother was also avid gardener and agriculturalist and raised animals. So I grew up on non-processed food. So my mom always made things from scratch. We had a very traditional Jamaican, Caribbean diet. I always tell people Jamaica, the motto is out of many, one people. So you can have curry chicken and you can have stir fries because, there were people who were Indo-Jamaican or Chinese Jamaican, Lebanese. So there's a lot of different um, cultures that are represented in Jamaica. Jamaica is 97% people of African descent. And so that's heavily what the food is. But there's, a flavor of Spain and flavor of England, Germany, and different things throughout the food that is very like African derived. So, but I grew up eating that food, but then my mom would on Fridays go to different neighborhoods in Toronto and we would eat out. And so that would be really fun. My favorite Jamaican food is oxtail. I think because I don't have it very often and it takes a long time to cook. And it's one of those meals that you have to cook for a lot of people. It doesn't make sense to make oxtail for one or two or three people because it takes like 3 to 5 hours, especially if you don't have a pressure cooker. So that's my favorite. And then it's an old fashioned dish called boya or blue draws it's like a cornmeal pudding that you wrap traditionally in banana leaf that it has raisins in it and different things, but I always loved that. And when I used to go to Jamaica for my vacations, my grandmother would always make it upon my arrival. And I always felt very special because it took a long time. So those are my two favorite dishes. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more about going to Jamaica and the type of food memories because being farmers, we would do like harvest picnics and all that kind of stuff and go fishing and go get shrimp and things like that. And that was really a fun thing being able to grow up in that type of way. So I'm gonna give it over to my daughter and cut up some more onion, and then we will start. We're supposed to do the chocolate mousse in the plan, but I'm gonna wait to do that. I think I'm gonna wait to do that, and you might not be able to see it set, but you'll be able to see the whipping and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna get to the other food.
My favorite food from Jamaica would be beef patties because they're something easy to make, and they're really good. And there's different variations that you can make it. You can make it with beef, you can make it with chicken. I prefer it with beef, especially spicy beef. I also love oxtail. We have it very rarely, only on special occasions, because it does take a while to make, but it is delicious. And every Christmas, Thanksgiving, I have it, and everyone in my family is rushing to get some.
What are some of the other Jamaican dishes that you like? Some of the dishes, and what are some of the different dishes in general that you like?
Other Jamaican foods that I like is ackee and saltfish. My mom talked about it yesterday, I believe. Um, we don't have ackee that much either. We have it a lot more than we have oxtail, but we don't have it a lot either. When I was younger, I didn't really like it. I thought it tasted weird and I thought the texture was weird. But as I grew up, I grew to like it. And I didn't like saltfish for a while too because I thought it was salty. But after a while, I started liking it too. In general, my favorite ever food would probably be sushi. Sushi, there's so many various ways that you can make it too, and it comes in so many flavors. And I like foods like that because each sushi that I have is never the same, and I like that.
Do you have a favorite kind of sushi?
No, not really. I like all of it.
I think because she grew up going to Mia's Sushi in New Haven that is now closed, and Bun Lai is doing stuff at his farm, but he's a sustainable sushi chef, and I went to high school with him, and so she's grown up having his sushi, and so he's so creative with his sushi that I think that she's had all different types. She likes bugs, like he serves bugs there. She likes shrimp a lot. She likes salmon, but he does all different types of things, and he seasons his sushi. It's not necessarily traditional, so she's kind of used to things that are highly seasoned. She likes stuff that is spicy, all that. So I have my mise en place already, and then I am going to start making the 2 different pasta sauces, and then I will take a break and then make the I will make the chocolate mousse, and then I will make the macaroni and cheese last. Because the macaroni and cheese, after you boil, we're boiling the pasta right now. Macaroni and cheese takes like less than 5 minutes to get it all together if you're gonna make it stovetop. So we'll decide whether we'll make it stovetop or put it in the oven, but we'll probably just make it stovetop for today. So let's talk about like tomatoes, and because we're trying to show the different intersections in regard to food and understanding what food, where food comes from, the science of food. So Rose, if we can go to where the videos for tomato sauce.
Okay, so the
Please.
surprising history of tomato sauce.
I think there's 2 videos.
Do you want to do both of them or just the one on tomato sauce?
I want to do 2. So do one after the other, and then. So I'm gonna be, while you're doing that, I'm gonna be starting to saute the onions. These are things that are not very interesting while you're watching the video.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jason Spieler, and we're at a beautiful organic farmhouse in Umbria, the perfect place to talk a bit about the history of the tomato. This most distinctive ingredient of Italian cuisine, of course, has its origins in the Americas. It was Columbus or Cortez who first brought it over to Europe. But before we continue that story, here in this lovely garden, surrounded by all these different varieties, let's see what we can find. So this is your standard pomodoro, a name that an Italian botanist actually gives this in 1544, literally meaning the golden apple, as the first varieties brought over, probably the yellow ones. Now this is just your standard classic juicy tomato. Over here we have the pelati, or the peeled. These are the ones that you parboil to make your different types of Italian sauces. And then these little ones are the ciliegine, or the cherry tomatoes, and these are the ones that you put inside of a caprese, or these are the ones that you just eat as a snack. In English, we still call this by the original Aztec name, the tomatal, which literally means the bursting fruit. And it's the acidity of this juice that led to the urban legend that the reason why this wasn't eaten so much in Europe for a very long time was that this acid reacted with the pewter dining ware, which then caused some of the lead to be released and poisoned the food. Well, there might be some kernel of truth to that. These were indeed considered to be poisonous, especially in England for a long time, and they weren't widely consumed until the mid-18th century. Of course, now tomatoes are grown and eaten everywhere, with China being the world's leading producer. But no other country better than Italy has aligned themselves with the magic of this incredible fruit. The Italians always insist upon the freshness, the quality, which leads to the most amazing taste, as these are some of the finest in the world.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ted Rogers. This is History by the Plate. We've been looking at the mother sauces of French cuisine, and the first three caused quite a roux. Today we're leaving the roux-based sauces behind us and moving on to what most of us remember as the first sauce we ever tasted, tomato sauce. Mesoamericans had been using tomato sauces for several thousands of years before Columbus, but the first written record of tomato sauce in Europe came from Spain in 1692. This sauce resembled what we know as pico de gallo, and the Spanish used it only on broiled meats. It would take Europeans over 300 years to use tomato sauces on anything but meats. So what was the first country to marry tomato sauce with pasta? Italy? Nope. It was actually the French in 1807 who first used their culinary noodles to unite pasta with tomatoes. However, the Italians perfected it just a few years later when Chef Cavalcanti in Naples published a recipe for vermicelli baked in tomato sauce. Not until 1847 was a recipe for macaroni with tomato sauce first published in America. Still, it was not until the 1920s that tomato sauce with pasta became popular in America. In 1924, Hector Boiardi, an Italian immigrant, opened a restaurant in Cleveland. His sauce became so popular he began selling it in jars and, in 1928, set up full-time production in a plant in Pennsylvania, where enough mushrooms and tomatoes could be grown to reduce costs. Due to their low cost, Chef Boyardi's sauces with pasta became a popular staple during the Great Depression. So yes, Chef Boyardee popularized spaghetti with tomato sauce in the United States. I hope this has been informative and fun. More fun history facts, recipes, and travel tips are on our website, www.historybytheplate.com. Happy cooking!
Hello. My daughter just asked if we're gonna exercise later because we're eating a lot of starchy things. I've been going to sleep right after, so I don't know about that. But I am going to wash my hands because I've had like alliums, which are onions and the garlic on there, and get a bowl to start whipping the heavy cream for the chocolate mousse. And then we will also, I also have to wash the bowl for that. So I also have to wash the bowl for that. So like, can you turn those actually off for right now while I do the chocolate mousse? All right, so that I'm gonna turn my back and do that for 2 seconds. All right. And then can you do me a favor? Can you put this in the microwave? Can you get me the ramekin right there? Thank you. All right, so this whipped cream recipe is very, very easy. It is just, can you get me the whipped cream? In the fridge, thanks. It's just whipped cream. You can have different recipes that include egg. And then you have to separate the eggs, and you do kind of like a chemical process where the egg whites become very frothy and the egg yolks are really silky. But I don't like that method because you have to temper, which is if you're doing it in a way that you don't know where your eggs are from, then you have to temper the eggs to make sure that they're okay. And that takes some time and over the stove, and it's a lot of different steps, and I'm kind of a lazy cook. I like things that are very easy. So this is one of my favorite recipes. I love whipped cream. It's very light. So can you do this for me, please? So we're gonna put the chocolate chips. So we have dark chocolate chips. We're going to put this in the microwave, and you do it a minute at a time. And if you don't have a microwave, you do put chocolate on a double boiler. So you put chocolate in one pan, and then you put a bigger pan of water underneath that pan. You boil the water slowly so the chocolate melts, and then you wait a second, and then you mix these two things together with some sugar. I'm gonna use agave because it's a syrup, and it will combine with the cream very easily. But then you can, usually I use powdered sugar, which also combines with this easily, or you can use sugar too. All right, so we're gonna put whipped cream in here. I got the majority of my ingredients from Aldi this week, and Aldi is very inexpensive. It's not sponsored, so just so you know, but it's like $1.59 for heavy cream, where this might be $3.99 somewhere else. So I just say that to say that this week was supposed to be about people using things that they have in they're pantry and are easily accessible. So macaroni and cheese, you have macaroni, you have cheese, you have milk, you have flour. You know, we're making coleslaw. People usually have mayonnaise. They usually have Parmesan cheese. So these are things to show people how to make stuff from scratch, which will make things cheaper. You do have to put the time in and the elbow grease in. And especially, I'm gonna hand this over to my daughter because takes a little bit of time. And when I'm doing team building events, I have people take turns doing this. And so if you do not want to do this, we do have a hand mixer. So I think she might get a hand mixer in a second. Then you can use a hand mixer. You do not want to overbeat the whipped cream because it will separate and will turn it kind of like into butter. So you want to watch that there is a time where you want to stop, right? So do it a little bit at a time. So you're melting the chocolate. You want to make sure you melt the chocolate and it's a little cool before you combine them together. And then I'll show you how we combine them together with a little agave. Sometimes I don't even put sugar because I don't like things too sweet. And so I like that natural dark chocolate and heavy cream. There's a little sweetness to the cream. So it really is up to you. You can use strawberries, you can use jam, you can use syrups to make a fruit mousse if you want to. So this is like why I like to show this, because there's lots of different applications that you can make. You can put coffee in here and sugar and make like a tiramisu kind of thing. You know, if you allow your kids to have caffeine. All right, so I'm gonna give this to my daughter. We started this. We will combine it together. I'll show you about combining the chocolate and the whipped cream when there are peaks. You see that it's a little bit thicker, but it will take a lot, especially with this whisk. It's not a wire whisk, it's a plastic whisk. It's gonna take a little minute. All right, I'm not gonna bore you. And then Soleil, I'm gonna leave this over here, and then I'm gonna come make the tomato sauces. So I'm gonna bring this over here. Like, can you bring that okay, should I just bring it? So we're going over to make the sauce now. We're making two different types of sauce. We are making just a regular tomato sauce. And then we're also can you see one right here? Okay. We're also, here is the meat sauce in this one. And so this is what you call a sofrito. And so a sofrito is onions, carrots, and celery. And so when you're making a meat sauce, Italians, you can do that. If you don't want, if you only just want to use onions and garlic, I put garlic at the end. Garlic burns, so you don't want to put garlic. I have another saucepan with just sauteed onions and garlic. Right now I'm putting the sauce in there. I'm turning this down because it's like popping. Oh. And I have to saute I'm sauteing the one that I'm gonna put ground chicken in. And I'm just stirring together the one that has onions and garlic. I will put a little diced tomato in here. And then you should do however you like your sauce. If you like it chunky, if you like it thick, you should do it. I like to make my own sauce. So I turn that off a little bit, please. We'll do that when we're doing another video. We'll finish that. I like to do my own sauce because there's either too much salt or definitely usually too much sugar. And when you make homemade sauce, you know, some people put sugar, but for instance, for the meat sauce, the carrots add sweetness to the sauce. Some people don't like carrots in their sauce, just like some people don't like carrots in their curry. It really is up to you, your own personal taste. There's not a right or a wrong answer. All right. I have tomato paste to thicken up things up. And so there is a bag of tomatoes. If you can get them, little tomatoes, so I can put in this one, please. No, a bag of tomatoes, canned tomatoes that we opened up yesterday for the salsa it was for the sauce. So yesterday we made salsa, which means sauce in Spanish. And today we're making an Italian sauce or 2 Italian sauces. And then we are making macaroni and cheese. So right now shells are also boiling. We have, forget what the name of this pasta. It's one of my favorite shapes. I'll put it in the packet. And we're going to use that for the meat sauce. So meat sauces, you want to use bigger or more heartier pasta like fettuccine. Here are tomatoes with basil and garlic diced tomatoes that we opened up yesterday. So I'm going to put that in the regular sauce. I'll let that boil a little bit, and I'll probably put a couple tablespoons of tomato paste just to thicken it up. So tomorrow we're making pizza lollipops, and we're making pizza. So I'll use these sauces also tomorrow. And that's what I want to show people, that when you have base and blueprint template recipes, then you can be able to use them as a base for other things. So we made refried beans on Monday, and then we used refried beans yesterday for quesadillas. You know, so you can use those refried beans to be able to make sopas, or to be able to make a Mexican lasagna for layers of that. Or to make breakfast quesadillas, where like everyone on TikTok likes to make the huge flour tortillas, and they make a cut, and then they put 4 different things and then stack them all together to make a little triangle. That's really cute. So, all right, so here are the aromatics. That's what they call this. This Frito, the aromatics are cooked and caramelized, and they have a little bit of color on them. I'm going to add to my ground chicken a little bit of sage, a little bit of Italian seasoning, you can put a bay leaf to your sauce. You can put oregano, basil, you know, whatever you have, then that's what you can, you know, put in there. You know, if you just have a little bit of basil, that's what you can put, and that can be enough. And I can't even find Italian seasoning. I know that there is, but I know I can put a bunch of different individual spices. So here I'm putting a little bit of rosemary. I have a little bit of thyme that I'll put in there. I'll find some individual oregano. There is Italian seasoning somewhere. There's a little bit of fennel seed. If you want it to taste a little bit like sausage, put fennel seed in there. All right. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit so it gets the chicken gets a little bit of brownness. Soleil, can you pass me a spoon to see if this pasta is done, please? And I have a little bit of tomato paste. You're gonna put the tomato paste in there so you kind of cook it a little bit. Huh? Okay. So you're browning and developing different steps of flavor. Try and let the tomato paste caramelize on the bottom of the pan as much as possible, including the chicken too. And you see I'm using a big pan because I don't want to overcrowd my ingredients, because if I overcrowd my ingredients, then it's going to sweat as opposed to saute and get brown. And that's okay too, but you get more flavor from caramelization than you get from water and condensation. All right, so I'm gonna put my can of tomatoes right here. My crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna mix everything together. I might add some more paste, but I think I'll put my paste in the other one. And if I was thinking, I would have caramelized it a little bit, but it's all right. We'll just keep it in here. Here's the other one. Well, it's just plain sauce and caramelized onions and garlic. That's it. And then, so like, can you pass me over there? There's some of the basil, fresh basil, please. I'll put a little sprigs of fresh basil in there and then just let these sauces simmer. Yesterday we made fresh spring rolls with this. So, there's different, different cultures use the same things in different dishes. If your basil was going bad, there's also going to be a recipe packet for pesto. We're not going to do that because usually you make pesto in the heart of the summer when you have a lot of basil. But I thought to include that because that's really fun. It's really fun to be able to make. Soleil, can you hold this for me, please? Thank you. To be able to make pesto with a mortar and pestle with your hands. See if this pasta is ready. I think it's ready. I am just draining the pasta. And then we will use the same pot to make our sauce. Right, so I'm gonna take these off right now, and the tomato sauce is done. I'm gonna leave this one on because the meat sauce, the more it simmers, the more it develops some flavor. I also have to put salt and pepper in these because I don't really want to try on camera. I usually don't taste it. I do it afterwards. And tomorrow we'll use some of these sauces to be able to make pizza lollipops. And also I brought flatbread for pizza, and I'll also show people how to make a quesadilla, since we have like leftover quesadillas, so you can see how you can use things and not let them go to waste. So I'm going to turn this down on low, let that simmer. I'm going to make macaroni and cheese. There is a video that tells you the history of macaroni and cheese. It's very interesting. It's extremely historical, and it ties in like the noodles and all that kind of stuff that we all love. I think that's always important to understand about the history of food if you like it. All right. So Rose, can you do that, please?
All right.
The macaroni and cheese. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thanks for watching. In this second episode of Historically Accurate, we'll be discussing the surprisingly aristocratic history of mac and cheese. While it's often thought of as a cheap staple for price-conscious college students, right up there with ramen or buttered noodles, the history of macaroni and cheese is surprisingly aristocratic. The history of macaroni traces back to the 13th century in Naples, Italy, where it was eaten by the king and nobles at court. Americans first came in contact with macaroni during the American Revolution, when Thomas Jefferson was in France, first taking part in the negotiations to end the war with Britain, and then as American ambassador to France from 1785 to 1789, where, in between bowls of mac and cheese, he even took part in the French Revolution. Jefferson became enamored with mac and cheese, and in his travels around Europe sought out those who manufactured it in France and Italy. The manufacturing process to produce the tubular pasta required fine-tuned machinery, and Jefferson took very detailed drawings of that process so that he could replicate it back in the United States. Jefferson noted that the best macaroni in Italy is made with a particular sort of flour called semola in Naples, but in almost every shop a different sort of flour is commonly used, for provided the flour be of good quality and not ground extremely fine, it will always do very well. A paste is made with flour, water, and less yeast than used in making bread. This paste is then put, by little at a time, about 5 or 6 pounds each time, into a round iron box, the under part of which is perforated with holes through which the paste, when pressed by the screw, comes out and forms the macaroni, which, when sufficiently long, are cut and spread to dry. The screw is turned by a lever inserted into the hole, of which there are 4 or 6. It is evident that on turning the screw one way, the cylindrical part, which fits the iron box or mortar perfectly well, must press upon the paste and must force it out of the holes. This whole machine requires a strong wooden frame properly fastened to the wall, floor, and ceiling of the room. It was this manufacturing process that made macaroni a delicacy, since it had to be processed by hand and laid out to dry. As you can see, the length of the macaroni pasta was much longer 200 years ago, but the tubular shape was very similar to macaroni today. The height of macaroni's aristocratic luxury came in 1802, when Thomas Jefferson served it at an official state dinner at the White House. The dish was not a particular favorite amongst all guests, with one writing, "Dined at the President's. Dinner not as elegant as when we dined before. Among other dishes, a pie called macaroni, which appeared to be a rich crust filled with countless onions or shallots, which I took to be, tasted very strong and not agreeable. Mr. Lewis told me there were none in it. It was an Italian dish, and what appeared like onions or shallots was actually made of flour and butter, with a particularly strong liquor mixed within." It is likely that Jefferson served the dish at other state dinners as well, but records are limited. The idea of mac and cheese being a cheap and easily available food started in 1937, when Kraft began mass producing and prepackaging it. Kraft Foods was founded by James L. Kraft, a Canadian immigrant to the United States, who started his own company as a door-to-door cheese business. While business was tough at first, he was soon joined by his 4 brothers to found J.L. Kraft & Brothers Company in 1909. By 1924, the company had changed its name to the Kraft Cheese Company and was listed on the Chicago Stock Exchange. Kraft had great success with prepackaged mac and cheese, as the cheap product appealed to adults who just wanted a quick and easy meal. The United States was in the grips of the Great Depression at the time, and having such a low-cost option easily available made it very popular very quickly, with Kraft selling more than 8 million boxes in its first year alone. While today, macaroni and cheese is available pretty much everywhere, selling for less than $1 a serving, 200 years ago it was one of the heights of luxury. Thanks for watching. We hope everyone found this interesting and educational. We hope to have many more videos on various topics available soon. Please like, share, and subscribe, and if you'd like to help the show, please check out our Patreon page.
Hello. So we're going to make macaroni and cheese now. Isn't that kind of interesting how macaroni and cheese came to be? So to show you this chocolate, can you see that, Rose, or no? Yeah.
Yep, I can see that.
Chocolate. And yeah. And so my daughter whipped the cream. Let's see that, Soleil, so they can see, please. And she put some agave in there. I said you can put sugar, your own sugar source, whatever. You cannot put any if you want to. Sorry, just, well, yeah. So you can, do for fun your own whipped cream, like whip it by hand, or you can use the hand mixer. So see? And then we're gonna mix the chocolate together. And then you can put them in individual mason jars or individual bowls, and you let it set inside the refrigerator. But that's all that it takes. So that's one of my favorite recipes for chocolate mousse. It's really easy. It's like 3 ingredients. And so I like to use like really high quality chocolate, like 75% or 70% cocoa. I love Taza chocolate because they're fair trade. And then also, no one's sponsoring anything. So I'm telling you things that I like and why I like them. Taza chocolate is fair trade, but then also I like it because it's pure and it has that sense of grittiness and that sense of authenticity and integrity. It doesn't have all that processed chocolate taste. And so I like when you're making a dessert that only has a couple ingredients, you want to use things that are very high quality. You can also put vanilla in here. And I love Nielsen Massey vanilla because they're also fair trade. And it's important to be able, it's important to support companies that support communities and don't pillage them, and make sure that they make money, especially if they're doing high commodity products like cocoa and vanilla. The people that are harvesting them should be able to make a fair living, and that's what fair trade is all about. So I just put some flour, I just put butter and a little bit of oil, because when you put butter in a pan, you should probably always put a little bit of oil so you don't burn the butter, because butter has a low temperature. I am going to get that whisk. I'm going to wash it off and whisk around. So this is, we're making a roux. So he made a joke in the video about a roux. So we're making a roux. If we're making a gumbo or something like that, you have different colors of roux. So we're doing kind of a white or blanc or blanche roux. And so we're mixing the flour and the butter together. And when it mixes together, when you're putting milk in there, it's not gonna clump. You don't want it to clump. So this is the basis of a bechamel sauce. And a bechamel sauce is one of the mother sauces he was talking about. And tomato sauce is one of those sauces too. So your kids, if they're watching, or whomever is watching, is learning the basics of sauces that you can do different things with. So just like with the tomato sauce, for instance, you can make the plain one. You can add some cumin and some Latino Mexican spices that make chili. You know, you can make other types of, you could add cream and then it'd be a tomato cream sauce. You know, you could, you know, this is for kids, but you know, alcohol burns off a vodka sauce. I would say the parents should make that, right? So here is the butter. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit, and my flour. I feel like I need to put a little bit more flour in there. So the butter clings onto the flour and you see it's really smooth. So when I put my milk in there to make my sauce, that it will be smooth. So it's taking a little minute to boil up, but it will come together. And you saw that in the video if you want to. Like sometimes I don't put the onion and the garlic like that and boil it and then take it out. What I do is that when I am melting the butter and the oil, I saute onions at low heat and caramelize them at low heat so they don't get a color and they melt down. And so you kind of have like essence of onion, like they just disappear in the sauce, but they have that sense of onion taste because macaroni and cheese doesn't have a lot of taste if you don't, you should use really good cheese if you have it available, but it can be kind of boring in one note. And so that's a way to add some flavor to it. So see that we're going to start boiling in a second. And we add some cheese. And you have the exact measurements. So this is like mixed cheese blends, 2 different mixed cheese blends. You can use whatever you want. You want to use cheddar, you want to use Gouda, you want to use Swiss cheese. Lots of people use different things. So it really is up to you. So you see how this is melting together? We're making, you want all of this to come together before we put the pasta inside there. I'm gonna find some pepper. You can put a little bit of nutmeg. When you're making pasta dishes, I like a lot of pepper, and so does Soleil. She told you that. So, but if you want to, just a little dash of nutmeg just brightens it up. And then I have a little bit of this natural onion salt because we both, my daughter and I, we both like things that taste like onions. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. And so we talked about alliums. Alliums are part of the onion family. So I'm going to put this together with the, can you pass me this? I'm draining the pasta. All right, we're gonna put this together. Bring this a little bit more for me. That part. Shake it a little bit, please. And so you see, this is ooey gooey. Does this look good to you, Rose?
Yep, I love creamy foods.
Yeah. This is a creamy food segment today. Here, sweetie. Thank you. All right, and we're just gonna put this together. So Rose, can you put like what are different types of fruits and vegetables, and then I will make the salad and do the salad dressing after that, but I want people to see about the pickles.
Okay, so you want me to play the video?
Yeah.
All right.
And thank you.
All right, so we all know that person who every time you say anything, they're like, actually, technically, tomatoes aren't vegetables. And before we do this episode, I want to encourage you to not be that person. But knowing the real classifications of the stuff that we eat can tell you a lot about where fruits and vegetables come from and how they're developed. So it's pretty interesting. Just don't use it to be an insufferable pedant. For example, officially speaking, anything that is a root, stem, or leaf of a plant qualifies as a vegetable, meaning that some things that you might ordinarily consider a fruit is actually a vegetable. Rhubarb, for instance, we think of kind of like a fruity thing because it's in pie and it tastes all sweet, but it's the stalk of a plant, so it's a vegetable. Vegetable pie, who thought of that? Corn, zucchini, and green beans, on the other hand, all fruit. So are tomatoes. That's because these foods are not roots, stems, or leaves. They're ovaries. Hopefully that doesn't make you feel too weird. So yeah, fruits are the ovaries of a flowering plant that develop after its seeds are fertilized, or sometimes after they've been triggered to develop without fertilization. From the plant's perspective, surrounding its seeds with something soft and juicy and delicious increases the chances that those seeds will get eaten and then spread around in nice, fertile piles of poo. So broccoli and cauliflower are not fruit, even though they are flower buds because they're unopened. The flower hasn't transformed. True fruits come in lots of different types, and some of them make for excellent anatomy lessons. One key factor for botanists in categorizing fruits is how many ovaries the flower had. So berries, by definition, are fruits that come from a single ovary with multiple seeds. That makes grapes, bananas, peppers, and tomatoes all different types of berries. But hold on to your shorts, because raspberries and blackberries are something totally different. They're called aggregate fruits, a whole bunch of little fruits grouped together. And strawberries aren't berries either. In fact, the tasty red part of a strawberry isn't even a fruit. It's a special kind of plant structure called a fleshy receptacle. You actually have to look much closer at the receptacle to see the fruits, which are called achenes. They're dry, one-seeded fruits that speckle the red surface of the strawberry. Sunflowers produce another achene, which you probably know as sunflower seeds. Nuts are fruits too, and their shells or coats develop from the ovary wall. That includes things like chestnuts and hazelnuts. But technically, walnuts and pecans are not nuts. Along with other single ovary fruits like peaches and plums and coconuts, they're called drupes. Drupes only have one seed with a distinct skin covering a fleshy middle layer. In a drupe, the inner layer is often called stone-like, and if you've ever accidentally chomped on a peach pit, you understand why. Now, if you want to get super fancy with your botanical terminology, raspberries and blackberries are specifically aggregate drupes, and each small section is called a druplet. But many fruits are more than just a ripened flower ovary. Take pome fruits, for instance, like apples and pears. Pome fruits are known as accessory fruits because there's so much more going on in them than a simple ovary. The ovary makes up only the core of the fruit. The flesh of the fruit is actually modified flower petals and sepals, the flower parts that cover a bud, and even the knobby receptacle at the base of the flower. And when you eat Hesperidium fruits, you're also getting a mouthful of the unexpected. This category includes fruits with tough rinds and little partitions, like lemons and grapefruits and oranges. Turns out that those small, packed together juicy bits in each section, called juice sacs, were once tiny hair-like cells on the inside of the ovary, but they filled to bursting with goodness as the fruit ripened. So the next time you drink a pulpy glass of OJ, enjoy your mouthful of fruit hair. Thanks for watching this SciShow Dose, which was brought to you by our patrons on Patreon, who allow us to explore the weird majesty of fruit science. If you want to get behind the scenes pictures or blooper reels or other cool stuff and support us, you can go to patreon.com/scishow. And if you want to keep getting smarter with us, you can always please go to youtube.com/scishow.
Rose, can you do the pickle? So sorry. Can you do the pickle also video? So then I will do the Caesar salad dressing afterwards and then the pickle.
Okay.
How to make the pickle. All right, thank you.
To make pickles, you don't need any fancy equipment and you don't need to deal with scary pots of boiling water. All you need is a jar. In the Chow Test Kitchen, our recipe for quick pickles uses a simple brine, works with a variety of summer vegetables, and will keep in the refrigerator for up to a month. To start, get any 1-quart glass jar with the lid. Since you're not canning this recipe, you don't have to sterilize the jar first like you would shelf-stable pickles. Just make sure it's clean and dry. This pickle recipe works with a variety of summer vegetables. I like to use baby carrots, Kirby cucumbers, zucchini, cauliflower, green beans, or even okra, just vegetables that you don't have to cook beforehand. You'll need 12 ounces to about a pound of the vegetables, and make sure you choose small to medium-sized ones so that they'll fit better in the jar. For green beans and okra, they're small enough so you don't have to cut them up at all. But if you're using cauliflower, cut it into 1-inch florets. If you're using longer vegetables like cucumbers, carrots, or zucchini, cut them into 1/2 to 3/4 inch pieces. I'm going to be using zucchini. When filling the jar, hold it up at an angle so that the vegetables stack on top of each other and pack tightly. Leave about a 1/2 inch of room at the top of the jar. Next, you're going to make a brine. Start by putting a tablespoon of brown mustard seeds and a teaspoon of black peppercorns in a small saucepan over medium heat. You're going to toast these until they get nice and fragrant. It'll take about 2 minutes. It's really worth doing this extra step because toasting it brings out the oils and the spices and adds a ton of flavor to your pickles. Next, you're going to add 1 1/4 cup cider vinegar, 3/4 cup water, 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of kosher salt, and a bay leaf. And you want to stir it around just to dissolve the salt and sugar. I like to use cider vinegar, which is made from apples, because it has more flavor than white vinegar but won't overpower the flavor of the vegetables. It's also inexpensive and easy to find. Let the brine come up to a boil and immediately pour it over the vegetables, leaving about a 1/4 inch of room at the top of the jar. Put it aside and let it cool to room temperature. It'll take at least an hour. This brine is a basic one, but feel free to experiment with other spices like dill or coriander seeds, or for spicy pickles, add chili flakes. Once it's cooled, put the lid on and give the jar a good shake or turn it upside down to move the spices around, then put it in the refrigerator. The pickles will be ready after about a day, but for the best flavor, leave them in there for up to a week. These pickles are a great way to preserve vegetables without any fuss. They're tart and crunchy, and they're delicious in sandwiches, on top of salads, or in Bloody Marys. And that's it, the easiest way to make quick pickles.
Hello. We are getting everything ready. With the butter in. You gotta take that out and butter it so it doesn't stick. Exactly. Right? Oh, do you want to turn the overhead one on, Rose, please?
I didn't turn it off on my end. Make sure that it didn't turn off on yours.
So, can you turn it on? Please. I might have just turned it off by accident, so is it on now? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I was saying, we're saying about pickles, and one of my favorite pickles are zucchini pickles. Because when you make them, a lot of people maybe don't like zucchini because they are, one of those things that are easy, summer squash, to be able to grow. And so you can have an overabundance of them. So, you can make zucchini bread, zucchini fritters, fried zucchini. But one of my favorite applications, because it's really healthy, is to be able to make zucchini pickles. And all it is what they showed you. And I'm going to show you an easier version of a pickle where we're not even going to boil anything. We're just going to put it in the jar with some vinegar and a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar, and that's it. And the zucchini then turns, the pickle cures the zucchini and gives it a different texture that I really love. They're really great, and it's a wonderful way, like in the morning, when you're eating vegetables, eating eggs, to like have a side of, I have a side of kimchi or a side of like some pickled vegetables, which are really great for your digestion. And also just like good for when you have an overabundance of things and you don't want them to go to compost, so you don't want to throw them away. So I like zucchini pickles. I usually do them with curry. Curry works really well with zucchini. So I'm just going to cut these. You don't want to do them too small because the vinegar cures the zucchini. So if you do them too small, the zucchini will feel a little too flimsy. So I'm going to put the zucchini in here. Like, can you pass me the cider vinegar over there? And where's the agave? And some salt, please. You have a little bit of agave. I'm just gonna put a little bit on there. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt. And then Soleil, can you see if you can find the curry? Then we'll put a little bit of curry in there. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt. And we have the exact measurements for what you'll need. But I always, as I said, like my grandmother, those people before me, they didn't use recipes. And so that's what I'm doing, not using recipes. But then also I have to say that I have been doing this for a long time. So we have the recipes for kids who might not. So these are good, like, so this has curry in there. So what would this be good with? As a condiment, as a side to some fish, some chicken. I like condiments. They're really easy to make and they hold for a long time. So I might have to put a little bit more vinegar to make sure it covers, because the pickle cures the zucchini and make sure that it doesn't spoil also, right? So I need a little bit. You see that it's right there, so I need a little bit more. You could also add a little bit of water so it's not so vinegary too. So you'll see by tomorrow or even less that they're like a chip, like they don't have that raw zucchini taste. As I said, it's a very lovely way. This and an oil brine for zucchini is one of the favorite ways in which to do zucchini. So now we're going to, why don't I show the last video? And then while making the Caesar salad dressing, then we can talk about all the things that she talks about in her video about food and legacy and the importance of preserving your culture through food. So Von Diaz is a cookbook author and she's self-taught and she's Puerto Rican, but she grew up in Atlanta, and she dropped so many jewels in her TED Talk about food and legacy that I hope that we can pass on to our kids, in which they feel that they can be the holders of our legacy. I want my daughter to videotape her great aunts, making oxtail, making rice and peas, making things that are part of our culture that we have all the time. And I am teaching her, and her grandmother is teaching her, but it'll be great to be able to have these videos and also photographs that we can share with our family members to come. All right, so we have one last video, and then I'll show you how to be able to make homemade Caesar salad dressing, and then we'll talk about legacy and ways in which we can preserve that too. Thank you. Rose, you okay?
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted by something. Did you want me to run the next video?
Yeah, the video on Von Diaz, the last one.
All right, one moment.
I love mofongo. Mofongo is a Puerto Rican dish, traditional dish, that's made by frying and then smashing green plantains, then adding garlic, olive oil, chicharrón, which is fried pork skins. It's super delicious. Very, very, very good. Maybe you're looking at this image if you haven't had mofongo before and thinking, that looks like some really heavy deep fried food. When I look at mofongo, I see creativity, ingenuity, and fusion. I see indigenous ingredients and African techniques. I see Spanish colonialism and US imperialism. I see my history. And each of you has a food history. Doesn't matter if your family's from Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Bulgaria, or Ireland. Our foods map our history and tell stories that often go untold. They tell the stories of migrations, of diasporas, of colonies and tribes. And they also tell more intimate stories about our families and how they grow and change over time. You can read these stories in baklava, in gumbo, in chop suey, because every dish has a story. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, actually in the suburbs outside of Atlanta, Georgia. There are actually millions of Puerto Ricans across the United States, more actually on the mainland than on the island, though maybe not so many here in New Hampshire. And Puerto Ricans here on the mainland, we're an immigrant community who aren't really immigrants. You see, I was born a citizen, but like so many other immigrants, I grew up feeling like an outsider. My customs, what I ate, were really strange to those around me. When I was in grade school and kids would send their parents to class with holiday cookies or cakes, my mom sent me to class with arroz con dulce, a coconut rice pudding filled with cinnamon and raisins. Growing up in the South was tough. There were very few Latinos in Georgia at the time, and I never met any Puerto Ricans. I met a few. And my Spanish was pretty terrible, but we did speak Spanish at home and at Catholic Mass on Sundays. Otherwise, I didn't see my culture reflected around me. There was no salsa music blaring from cars, no guava pastries in the bakeries. So I grew up pretty Southern, saying y'all and ma'am, eating cheese grits and fried okra. Over time, I grew more connected to the South, and today, I'm proud to claim my Southern identity. I struggled with my Latina identity in the South, but I also struggled with my Southern identity in Puerto Rico. Growing up, I went to Puerto Rico often and would spend whole summers with my grandmother, Tata. But when I would go to Puerto Rico, I woke up most mornings feeling miserable, hot, and sweaty. The heat was incredibly difficult for me. I was a super American kid, and I needed air conditioning. And so with my Spanish also, again, growing up not being so great, I couldn't make friends. And most of those summers, I was really, really lonely. And I felt like an outsider there, too. I didn't belong in Puerto Rico. I didn't belong in Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't know where I belonged. But my grandmother, Tata, was an amazing cook and introduced me to the flavors that I'm obsessed with today. And as I ate these flavors and tasted more of them, the more and more I felt at home. So Puerto Rican food became my tether to the island. As you can imagine, the more I ate, the rounder I got. Actually, my mom used to say that I looked like a meatball with legs when I came home. But I wasn't just putting on pounds in Puerto Rico. I was also learning about the ingredients and flavors I needed to make these foods at home. Eight years ago, Tata was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She struggled with dementia, at times forgetting the names of her children and grandchildren, and often seeing things that weren't there. She also couldn't cook anymore and couldn't chop. She was constantly burning things and would confuse everyday herbs like culantro and oregano. She once put a whole can of soup in the microwave. But she still loved to eat, and I cooked for her every chance I got. A couple of years ago, I got my hands on her 1962 copy of the traditional Puerto Rican cookbook, Cocina Criolla, which was her favorite cookbook. Think of it as the Puerto Rican joy of cooking. So I started cooking my way through this cookbook, sort of Julie and Julia style, as a way to honor her, but also because I really wanted to soak up every bit of taste memory that she had, to know what made her smile and say que rico, or frown and say guacala. Cocina Criolla was published in 1954 and has been republished 68 times with very, very few additions. It's still widely used and really popular. Ask any Puerto Rican you know and they probably have a copy. But in many ways, the Julie and Julia comparison doesn't quite translate. We all know who Julia Child was. She's famous, she's trained in French kitchens, she had a fierce, loyal following. Carmen Aboy Valdeuli, the author of Cocina Criolla, she was a self-taught home cook. She didn't have a TV show or a newspaper column. She wasn't a celebrity. And what you see in her book are recipes that reflect the ingredients and dishes of her time. Cocina Criolla isn't the joy of cooking, or even the Betty Crocker cookbook. And as I started cooking my way through it, I ran into challenges. First, the recipes are incredibly time-consuming. Many of them require marinating meats for 2 days in advance, followed by hours of slow cooking. I'm not a homemaker, I have a full-time job, and so coming home at the end of a long day to start a dish that takes 4 hours, simultaneously overheating my apartment, using 5 or 6 pots and pans, every surface in my kitchen and dining area, and sometimes the bathroom, which happens to be in my kitchen, only to have dinner ready 4 hours later at midnight. It wasn't working. Next, Puerto Rican, second, most of the dishes in Cocina Criolla are really heavy and fattening. They require a lot of lard and olive oil and deep frying, and there are almost no vegetables. Where there are vegetables, they're either canned or cooked to smithereens. But in many ways, this kind of food reminded me of food from an area I'm much more familiar with, the South. Now, we know that Southern food today is not just fried chicken and macaroni and cheese, but a lot of traditional Southern food involves butter, deep frying, and putting bits of fatty pork into just about everything to add flavor. This ends with food that is fattening, filling, sticks to your ribs, starchy, food that will sustain people that work hard, like farmers and laborers. And here's where it started to really make sense to me, and I began to understand how the two places where I had grown up were connected. Puerto Rico became a Spanish colony more than 500 years ago. The indigenous Taínos were quickly enslaved or killed, and huge communities of African slaves were brought in to work the fields and sugar plantations. The indigenous Tainos shared their ingredients and their styles of cooking, and the African slaves also brought ingredients and techniques from their own home countries, things like plantains, cultivating rice, grinding spices into flavorful pastes, and frying meat in oil to preserve it. And many of these techniques and ingredients are visible in Puerto Rican food today. If you haven't had Puerto Rican food before, you might assume that it's like Spanish food because of its colonial history. And it does have a lot of Spanish influence. You see it in things like bean stews with chorizo and potato and egg tortilla española. But most Puerto Rican food is nothing like food from other Spanish colonies, like Mexico or Peru or Argentina. It's an absolute hybrid with just as much in common with Spain as with Jamaica and the American South. In Spain, you might see something like gazpachos or delicately flavored paellas, but in Puerto Rico, we have rice and beans and boiled yuca. In Puerto Rico, this story has yet another chapter. Mofongo, which is such a fusion of Puerto Rican, Spanish, indigenous, and African ingredients and flavors, being stuffed into a turkey. It's sometimes called a pavochon because it's seasoned like a traditional lechon or pork roast. I grew up in Puerto Rico in the South, but today I live in East Harlem, or El Barrio, an iconic Puerto Rican neighborhood in Manhattan. In the summers, the streets are filled with salsa music and piragüeros riding push carts selling coconut shaved ice. And the grocery stores in my neighborhood have things I've only ever seen in Puerto Rico, like salt cod, guava paste, annatto seeds, and every kind of Goya product you can imagine. So these dishes have taken on a new life for me. I grew up cooking and eating them with my family, but today I make them in my tiny kitchen with my friends and loved ones. I've made dozens of recipes out of cocina criolla, and each time I do more and more experimenting. I recently made tembleque, a type of coconut panna cotta that's so popular in Puerto Rico, it's even made in instant pudding form. I used a cocina criolla recipe and made coconut milk from scratch, and it was totally worth it. I've also taken this project completely out of my New York kitchen into other people's kitchens. In November, I hosted a supper club at Lucky Luna, a Mexican-Taiwanese restaurant in Brooklyn. I designed a menu of heavily adapted recipes from cocina criolla that included things like a chayote and green bean salad with avocado, and bao, or steamed buns, with pernil and ajili mojili sauce. And I'm not the only one longing to adapt and evolve Puerto Rican cuisine. Chefs in Puerto Rico today are starting to look really closely at its African and indigenous ingredients. And farmers are starting to grow things that have never grown in Puerto Rico before. Because Puerto Rico, like Cuba and the Dominican Republic, was cultivated for sugarcane, not kale. Tata passed away on March 7th. I recently found a note from her where she said that she was proud of me, that she loved me, and that it made her so happy that I liked to cook like she had. She sent it in the mail along with one of her other favorite Puerto Rican cookbooks. Today, I'm working on a cookbook with recipes from this project, in part to honor her in each of its pages, but also to share this incredible gift she gave me of connecting to my history and culture through cooking. And it all started for me when I got curious about one dish. So I hope that y'all will all get curious about your own dishes. Is there something your mom always made that you thought was great and you didn't know why? What's in that brown sauce that your dad puts on ribs? Does your grandma make really great Indian food, even though she's Greek? And just how does your mom make the best flan you've ever had? When you go home today And the next time you're at a holiday meal with your family, I hope you'll think back, share what you've learned with your family, and start to build a deeper understanding of how what you eat is so much more than what you like, what tastes good, or what you ate growing up. What we eat says so much about where we're from, and even more about who we want to be.
So we have around 8 or 9 minutes left. And so I want to make sure that I get to, Rose, can you, I want to get to all the recipes. So I don't know if you saw right under when the video was going on, we made a baked macaroni and cheese with some shrimp and some cheese on top. It might have looked a little toasty, but it wasn't burnt. But it was a little toasty, but it tasted really delicious. And so we're making Caesar salad dressing. And Caesar salad dressing is actually from Acapulco and in Mexico. And I should have, because I'm not good at memorizing different kind of historical facts, I should have looked that up a little bit beforehand. I think that was necessary, but you can do that yourself. That's Dijon mustard. Here is some lemon juice. I'm going to catch the seeds. See all that? Mix that around to make it easier for everything to come together. We had some mayonnaise in there. Got a little pepper. Of course, a little salt. Got our pickles that look really pretty. Curry pickles. Zucchini, and then we're going to put some Parmesan. And then we're going to put some fish sauce. If you don't have anchovies, and you can choose not to put that in there. Some people feel that they're like, oh, I don't like anchovies. Anchovies are in a lot of things. So you'll be surprised what anchovies are in. And so fish sauce is a more palatable way for some people. I couldn't find the anchovies that I think I bought, but I'm not sure. So you can just use fish sauce. And as I said, if you don't like that kind of, it's like a umami flavor, like mushrooms. We were talking about saltfish, you know, like I come from a culture of saltfish and eating that kind of stuff. So I'm used to those kind of, some people might call them funky flavors. I would call them umami and developed flavors. So that's about, oh, Worcestershire sauce. I'm gonna get the Worcestershire sauce because I bought some. Well, we will find the Worcestershire sauce that I bought. And we'll put that in there. It's a joke, and there's a meme like, what do you do with Worcestershire sauce? And so Worcestershire sauce is a mixture of different things, but you can use them for marinades, and it definitely is good in Caesar salad dressing. You only need a couple of drops, so I don't even know if you'll notice that it's not there, but I probably would notice. Yeah, so you don't need any extra salt. I'm gonna put a little bit more lemon juice in here. Oops. Like squeeze out as much lemon as you can. And then you just mix it with the rainbow coleslaw is like regular coleslaw that you can buy in a store that's always under $2. Some purple coleslaw that was already cut, but you can buy that. Cabbage is one of the cheapest things that you can ever use. And being Jamaican, we eat it all the time, every week. So it's one of those things I like to showcase because you can do so many things with it. You can bake it, you can roast it, you can grill it, you can make coleslaw with mayonnaise or coleslaw without mayonnaise. There's so many different things that you can do. So here, if you want to, this Caesar salad, it's like a winter Caesar salad. We're going into spring right now. I have some sugar snap peas, so I'll probably cut those up to put in there. You can do asparagus, you can do celery or radish, whatever you want. It's supposed to be a rainbow salad, so it's supposed to have different colors. So we have a bunch right here, and then you just mix it all together. And if you want to put croutons on there, you can, and some extra Parmesan cheese. There's enough Parmesan cheese in here. The dressing is fantastic. It's so much better when you make things from scratch. And I hope that you learned that today. So tomorrow is our last day. It's been so great to teach people how to cook all throughout the week. We are going to make fun foods, I guess. They are foods for tea, foods, I don't know how we preface it. So like we're doing tea, we're doing tea sandwiches. So we're doing a sporgata. So that is from Northern Europe. And so they are sandwiches that you decorate and you fill with different types of fillings. And so that's going to be fun to show you how you can decorate something that's really great for tea. We're also going to make quesadillas. So we're going to make pizza lollipops and vegan banana bread, and how to make different syrups. So you can make tea or a refreshing drink for yourself that is all natural. So it's great to close out the week. This has been New Haven's school vacation. My daughter is kind of perturbed at me, but I'm glad that she has been joining and participating. I appreciate that. And also helping with the filming. I appreciate Rose and the library for their support, and look forward to closing out tomorrow.
All right. Have a nice evening, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good night. Thank you.